Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to continue my talk about I Ching. Thanks to all my followers who asked me to go ahead with the topic of I Ching and Confucian Ethics first. So, this is the topic I'm addressing today. Many of you also asked me to make a video for the other topic, so the Confucian vision of paradise will be the topic for my next Chinese philosophy video. For today's topic, I would like to explain the connection between I Ching and Confucian ethics. At Confucius' time, there might be many texts containing contents related to ethics we know today as Confucian ethics. However, there are only 4 texts survived until today. They are Chunqiu, or the Chronicles of Spring and Autumn, Shangshu, the classic of documents, Shijing, or the Book of Songs, I Ching, the Book of Changes. They are all allegedly edited by Confucius himself and used as textbooks for his disciples. Hence, they are the sources of Confucian ethics for later Confucian scholars until the turning of 20th century, when the discovery of scripts on the oracle bones, the bronze whistles, and the bamboo strips from the various archaeological sites that completely changed our understanding of Confucianism. These discoveries changed our perception on the early development of Confucianism and the scholarly interpretation of the early texts, especially that of I Ching. Of course, researchers are still working on these newly discovered texts, and there is no consensus among the historians, the philosophers, and archaeologists about how to interpret these texts and what are the impacts of these texts on Confucian philosophy. I'm not an expert on either I Ching nor these related disciplines except classical Chinese philosophy. But I'm very excited about both these new discoveries and the reinterpretation of I Ching and other classical texts, as well as what they revealed about Confucian ethics. Since many of the materials published are either in Chinese or too technical for the general public, I think it might be beneficial for me to make a video about the recent discoveries and their impacts on my understanding of Confucian ethics, and maybe more videos on related topics. I would like to thank the Chinese historian Li Shuo for inspiring me to make such videos. He recently published a book in the title of Jian, or Overthrowing the Shang Dynasty. His book presents a fascinating historical account of the radical culture and religious transition from the Shang Dynasty to the Zhou Dynasty, based on the fragmented written texts inscribed on the oracle bones and the bronze vessels from the Shang to the early Zhou dynasties. I don't think there is an English edition of the book yet, so I'm going to make a few videos reviewing the book as well as commenting on related topics that he touched on in this book in the near future, hoping someone might translate this 600-page monumental work soon. I'm still reading the book and taking notes. I also based my translations of the hexagrams and their interpretations on my reading of Gao Heng's 1984 book, 周易古今今注, a modern notation of the ancient classic of I Ching, which present a radically new interpretation of I Ching from that of the conventional interpretation passed down to us from the 3rd century by a scholar named Wang Bi. I might make a video about this scholar in the future. Gao Heng's reading of I Ching is based on archaeological discoveries and other classics only available since the turn of the 20th century. However, I would not discredit the authenticity of Wang Bi's interpretation and the I Ching scholarship developed over the last 2,000 years based on his and later scholars' reading. This kind of I Ching readings have become independent schools of thoughts and practices and have their own culture and historical significances. What I'm presenting here is to meet the academic curiosity about what I Ching might mean to King Wen and the Duke of Zhou more than 3,000 years ago. And as acknowledged by Professor Li Shuo, many of the new readings of I Ching are simply speculations just like Wang Bi's 2,000 years ago because we can't talk to King Wen or Duke Zhou directly. Like Wang Bi, our readings of I Ching are also guesswork. I'm Dr. Gao, a philosopher specialized in classical Chinese philosophy, professional ethics, and philosophy of medicine. I'm also passionate about the classical Chinese poetry. I make videos about the classical Chinese poetry, philosophies, and traditional Chinese medicine. Please click the like button and subscribe my channel. Your support is very important to me. Any small donation to my channel is much appreciated so that I can focus on making better and more videos for you. I also offer one-to-one online lessons on these topics. If you would like to have personally tailored lessons or read the original Chinese text with me, please contact me. Here's my email address. Now, back to I Ching and Confucian Ethics. As I mentioned in my earlier video about I Ching and Confucius, people often do not make the connection between Confucian ethics and I Ching. However, the recently unearthed bamboo texts from the Warring State period of the 3rd century BCE reveal that there was a close connection between the I Ching and Confucius. Before these archaeological discoveries, the conventionally acknowledged sources of Confucian thoughts are 论语 or the Analects, which is a collection of the master's and his disciples' sayings and the anecdotes of their activities compiled by Confucius' disciples, and 孔子家语 or the sayings of Confucius' family, allegedly compiled by Confucius' grandson, Zisi. Both texts were allegedly discovered from the walls of Confucius' residence during the early Han Dynasty, and they show little connection between the Confucian moral thoughts and I Ching. However, as I mentioned earlier, not only there was a close connection between the I Ching and the Confucian thoughts, but some scholars such as Professor Gao Jianli from the Shangqiu Normal University also argues that what we know today as Confucian ethics is directly derived from I Ching. He identifies several I Ching hexagrams that explicitly present statements corresponding to the ethical principles promoted by Confucius and his followers. I know this is a rather radical claim, so here I present and translate 4 hexagrams with ethical significance that he identified in his paper. You can make your own judgment about the connection between I Ching and Confucian Ethics. I listed the link to his paper in the description section down below if you would like to check it out. The 4-hexagram Professor Gao Jianli identified as the sources of Confucian morality are hexagrams Li, Jian, Jian, and Lin. The first 2 hexagrams present moral values regarding familial relationship between the parents and children, that between grandparents and grandchildren, as well as that of the master and mistress of a household. The last 2 hexagrams present the moral principles regarding politics. Now, let's look at the hexagram Li, which presents the most important Confucian value, that is filial piety. Filial piety refers to an attitude of respect to one's parents and ancestors. The term of filial piety is a rough translation of the Chinese character xiao. Now, I would like to examine the character xiao in detail. From the left to the right are different scripts of the character in different periods. The first is the earliest archaeological script, which is a combination of the characters of Lao, meaning an elder, and Zi, meaning a son or a young person, signifying a young person supporting the elder. However, the statements from the hexagram Li present a much harsher reality than just a respectful attitude. They outline a list of harsh punishments if a son or a daughter do not show enough respect to his or her parents or grandparents. Now, let me translate the hexagram statement first. 力争享续聘牛吉 Li means beneficial. Zhen refers to the act of performing divination. Xiang means sacrifice. Xu means raid. 聘牛 refers to cow. Ji means auspicious. So the whole statement can be translated as: this divination result is good. Offer sacrifice. We prepare a cow. Auspicious. This statement seems rather mild. But how is this related to filial piety? Well, I think this hexagram recorded something that might have nothing to do with filial piety. I'll tell you what it is about after I read the statements of each line. Remember, the bottom line is the first line. The first line statement is, he wears golden shoes. So respect, no mistake. This line is probably about showing respect to men with high social status. I don't know anything about the dressing code of the Zhou dynasty, but I'm pretty sure that there was one. Men wearing shoes with golden embroidery were certainly of high social status. The interpretation from Gao Heng states that the golden shoes indicate high social status. The second line statement is, a yellow mountain demon, auspicious. This line probably recorded a sighting of the mountain demon. Gao Heng explains this mountain demon is a sort of mountain god taking the form of a ferocious animal. But The yellow color of the beast indicates that the appearance of such a demon is an auspicious sign. The third line recalls another appearance of the mountain demon. The statement is, a mountain demon appears at dusk. If one sings without beating a basin, the elders will suffer misfortune. Inauspicious. Gao Heng cited many classic texts supporting his interpretation that when a mountain demon appears at dusk, it was an inauspicious sign, and one should sing and beat the basin to drive it away. Otherwise, the elders will suffer misfortune. It is quite interesting that the timing of the appearance of a mountain demon is so important. The fourth line statement is the most important one according to Professor Gao Jianli. He cites Gao Heng's interpretation, arguing that there is a close connection between this hexagram statement and the Confucian value of filial piety. Gao Heng's interpretation is that this line statement outlines the harsh penalties for unfilial sons or daughters. Gao Heng cites the law from Zhou Li, or the rights of Zhou dynasty, stating that if a son or a daughter kills his or her parent or grandparents, he or she should be burned. Based on their interpretation, I translate the statement of this line as, an exiled son returned. He should be either burned, executed, or exiled again. I also did some research on what filial piety meant during the Imperial China. Apparently, filial piety was not just a respectful attitude towards one's parents and ancestors. It carries significant legally binding responsibilities and penalties if the responsibilities were not fulfilled. A father or mother could sue their sons or daughters for the crime of 忤逆, or being rebellious and act against the wishes of the parents, and the sons or daughters would be punished quite harshly. If a son or a daughter killed one of the parents or grandparents, no matter what were the circumstances, the son or daughter would face death penalty as prescribed in the rights of Zhou dynasty. On the other hand, although punishment for killing one's children or grandchildren varies from dynasty to dynasty, they were certainly much lighter. For instance, the Tang Dynasty law excluded ill intention from such killings. It states that if a parent or a grandparent accidentally killed their children or grandchildren when disciplining them, he or she might be sentenced for 2 or 3 years of exile. This is certainly much lighter than the death penalty if a young person accidentally killed his or her parent or grandparent. Infanticide by parents or grandparents were illegal. However, such killings were often regarded as family affairs and ignored by the state, hence no punishment at all. So, being filial in Imperial China for a young person was not just a matter of respect, but a matter of life and death. The fifth line statement is, a torrent of sad tears, shy, auspicious. These statements read like a description of the responses of the people witnessing the delivery of the harsh punishments to the unfilial young people. However, because These are expressions of normal human feelings. It was interpreted as an auspicious sign. The last line statement is, the king went for an expedition, collected many heads. There is also other gains. No mistake. This statement seems having no connection to the statements of the other lines. However, if you are aware of another brutal tradition about the military campaign, you might be able to understand the connection between all these statements. In ancient China, it is a common practice to offer human sacrifices before a military campaign to ensure victory, and another human sacrifice after a victory. A silk book unearthed from the Han tomb in 1974 in the title of 皇帝16经政乱, or the Yellow Emperor's 16 Strategies Against the Rebellion, reported that the Yellow Emperor skinned the chief of his enemy, Chiyu, and made a target out of the hide. Apparently, the killing of the unfilial sons or daughters were part of the sacrificing ritual before the military campaign. This hexagram initially had nothing to do with filial piety. It is about the ritual sacrifice for a military campaign and the result of the expedition. We first see the arrival of a noble man, maybe a king or a general or both. His golden-colored shoes indicate his high social status and command respect from all the people around him. He, or the high priest, revealed the auspicious and inauspicious signs of the past year. But the most significant event recorded here is the sacrifice of the unfilial sons or daughters. They were either burned, executed, or exiled. The last line's statement reported the results of this military campaign. It is quite surprising this heartwarming ethical value came from such a brutal practice. The second hexagram, Professor Gao Jianli, identifies as of significance for the articulation of Confucian ethics is the hexagram of Jian, or the family members. Now, let me read all the statements. Hexagram statement. If a priestess gets this hexagram, auspicious. First line statement. The household has a lock on its gate. No regret. Second line statement. Do not fail the mistress' duties. Organize and provide meals for the family. Auspicious divination results. Third line statement. The men of the family are loud, serious, and strict. Auspicious. Women and children are laughing and playing, and with regret. Fourth line statement. Save up for the family, auspicious. Fifth line statement. The king visits the family. Don't worry, auspicious. Sixth line statement. To punish harshly, auspicious at end. The statement of this hexagram clearly outline the duties and roles of different members of the family. The first, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth line statements are about the roles of the male members, especially the master of the household. He should make sure the family is well protected. Locks are installed at the gate to make an income and save up for the family. To conduct divination if the king were to visit his household. and to punish family members if they did something wrong. The second line is specifically for the mistress' duty. She is to organize and prepare all the food, either to feed the family, to entertain visitors, or to offer sacrifices to the ancestors. The third line statement is quite interesting. It requires that the adult male members to be solemn and serious all the time. But women and children can laugh and play as long as they keep their fun modest. Professor Gao Jianli argues that this hexagram is the source of the Confucian principle about the gender roles of the husband and wife. The wife is to fulfill her duties of running the family daily chores, obey and serve the husband. I agree with his interpretation of this hexagram specifies the duties of the master and the mistress of the household, but I disagree with his claim the wife obeying and serving the husband. It is clear that this hexagram outlines more duties for the masters and the male members of the family than that of the mistress, such as providing income and protection to deal with difficult situations such as disciplining the family members and preparing and hosting important visitors such as the king, etc. It is also important to note that the mistress also plays an important role in preparing and offering sacrifices to the ancestors, which carries huge power, especially in the case of a widowed grandmother. She is the real head of the house after her husband passed away. Such scenario had played out many times in the royal families when an emperor was too young to rule. His mother, the empress dowager, often functions as the reason to rule the empire on his behalf until the young emperor performed his coming-of-age ceremony, often at the age of 20 years old. Sometimes the mother might not like to give up her power and simply took over the throne, as in the unique case of Wu Zhetian. Such power struggles between the mothers and sons appeared many times in imperial China. Sometimes the biological mother of a crown prince was executed to prevent such power struggle. The Han Emperor Liu Che allegedly executed the biological mother of his young crown prince to prevent the mother meddle with state affairs. The Northern Wei dynasty of the 4th to 6th century CE even institutionalized this rule to execute all the mothers of their crown prince before they ascend to the throne. The third hexagram Professor Gao Jianli identifies as the source of Confucian ethics is the hexagram Jian. Jian literally means limp. It also means difficult. However, another character, Jian, is used in its place in some version of I Ching. Gao Heng argues that it should be this Jian here because it makes more sense in this textual context. Jian means difficulty or slow in speech. The character Jian is often used in pairs as Jian Jian to describe the attitude of being honest and articulated in one's speech, especially when one is presenting constructive criticism to one's superior. Gao Heng argues that Jian is the right character meant here. That is, this hexagram represents the moral value of true loyalty. In other words, to be courageous and honest enough to present criticism to one's king. The newly deciphered bamboo strips from the Warring State period of the 4th century supports Gao Heng's view. In the text of the title of 二三子问, or questions by 2 or 3 deciphers, Confucius also interpreted this hexagram as a description of presenting criticism to the king. Of course, this new interpretation based on archaeological findings is very different from the conventional interpretation we inherited from Wang Bi of the 3rd century CE. Wang Bi interpreted Jian as impasse, and this interpretation becomes the accepted interpretation. However, Jian does not make sense in relation to the statements of the other lines and the statement for the whole hexagram. For instance, why would an impasse be auspicious to the king or his kingdom? But, as Gao Heng argued, if we replace this Jian, impasse, with Jian, constructive criticism, it all makes sense. Now, let me read all the statement. Hexagram Jian statement. The southwest is advantageous. The northeast is not. It is beneficial to meet with the imminent ones. Auspicious divination result. First line. Presenting honest critique to the king brings about good reputation. Second line. The officials present criticisms to the king many times. They do not consider about their self-interest. Third line. The officials present their critique to the king and debate about them. Fourth line. The officials criticize the king. The king rebuts their critiques with clever words. Fifth line. Great critique brings supporters. Sixth line. The officials present critiques. The king consults the officials. Auspicious. Beneficial to meet the imminent ones. It is quite interesting to see that the first line starts with the assurance that being honest and courageous to present criticism to the king will bring a good reputation to an official. Then it goes on to say that the criticism is not for the official's self-interest. Now, I would like to clarify the different names for King Wen. Historically, he was often referred as Zhou Wen Wang, or the King Wen of Zhou. Zhou was the name of his branch of the tribe whose tribal name was Ji. As you might know, the Chinese family name is called Xing Shi. However, in ancient time, Xing and Shi refer to different things. Xing is the name for a whole tribe. Shi is the name for a branch of the tribe. For instance, there were different branches who shared the name of Ji tribe. King Wen's forefather settled at Zhouyuan, or the Zhou Plain, and adopted Zhou as the name of their branch. So King Wen's given name is Chang, so he is also called Ji Chang. So, when explaining King Wen's name, many historical texts state Wen Wang Ji Xing Zhou Shi. That is, King Wen is from the Zhou branch of the Ji tribe. Fun facts. The character of Xing is the combination of the characters of 女 or woman, and the character of 生 or gave birth. So 姓 literally means to be born by a woman. The many 姓 has the radical of 女 or woman in them, such as the name of the grandmother of King Wen is Jian, the name of his mother is Ren, and the name of his wife is Si. This might be the trace of matriarchal society before the Zhou dynasty. However, once the patriarchal society was established during the Zhou dynasty, Xing was taken over by men to name the descendant of the same man. Shi instead refers to the surname of a woman from her father. The third and the fourth line describe a scene where the official criticizes the king and the king defends himself with clever words, and the officials debate about their critiques and the king's self-defense. The grand historian Sima Qian describes a similar scene about the King Zhou. He says, King Zhou has a quick wit. He knew enough knowledge to rebut the others' criticisms, was eloquent enough to cover his mistakes with clever words. I'm highly suspicious that this hexagram described a scene Ji Chang witnessed at King Zhou's court when he was showing off his charisma and intelligence. I'm pretty sure the grand historian Sima Qian had sources about King Zhou that were lost to us but still available to him. The last two lines outline the benefit of such critique to not just the officials themselves, but also to the king and the state. The fifth line says that the constructive critique to the king is beneficial to the official because it would bring many supporters. And the sixth lines declare that such debate at the court is an auspicious sign for the kingdom because it invites talented people to come to their kingdom. I think these last two lines are about how Ji Chang ran his own court. He encouraged his officials to criticize him, and more importantly, he consulted them about state affairs. For Ji Chang, real loyalty lies with the honest and courageous criticism an official can present to his king rather than flattering the king with fake praises. We can see how this moral principle was practiced by both Confucius and his philosophical heir Mencius. We find many such scenarios in the Analects of Confucius and Mencius. When they were asked about state affairs, they often offer their critiques frankly, sometimes even a bit rudely to the dukes and kings who bothered to consult them. This principle was also highly valued and promoted by Confucian scholar officials of later dynasties. For instance, the court historians praised the Great Tang Dynasty Emperor Li Shimin and the kind and humble Song Dynasty Emperor Zhao Zhen for their openness to criticism, and the officials who dare to criticize the emperors in front of all the officials at their courts. There is a story about Emperor Zhao Zhen and his advisor Bao Zhen. Zhao Zhen's favorite concubine asked Zhao Zhen to promote her father to an important position. Out of love for her, Zhao Zhen raised the issue in the court, but the proposal was rejected by his cabinet. Later on, the concubine raised the issue with him again. So, Zhao Zhen simply announced the promotion without the approval from his cabinet. The then head of the advisory board, Bao Zhen, got really mad and shouted it to the emperor's face. Zhao Zhen quickly dropped the proposal and told his concubine what had happened. And he wiped off Bao Zhen's spit from his face, saying, "You just know you want your father be promoted. Don't you know Bao Zhen is the head of the advisory board? This is why I love the Song dynasty the best. It was the rare time when the Chinese people really enjoyed a peaceful and prosperous life, and the scholar officials could realize their ambition to advise and help the emperor to build a Confucian paradise for the people. My next big project is to present more poems of the great scholar officials from the Song dynasty and tell their life stories. The officials of the Song dynasty were the true Confucians." The last hexagram Professor Gaojian Li identifies as the source of Confucian moral values is the Lin hexagram. Professor Gaojian Li argues that this hexagram is the origin of the Confucian principle of Ren, or humanity. This is perhaps the most important Confucian moral principle. It is the guiding principle for governance as well as interpersonal interaction. Now, let's look at the name of this hexagram. The character Lin has gone through substantial changes over time. The first one on the left is the bronze vessel script of the character. It has the image of an eye on the top. The lower part signals the sound. So, it has the meaning of watching over for someone, or the derived meaning of governing. Hexagram Lin statement. Great offerings, auspicious sign. There is misfortune for any expedition outside of August. The hexagram Lin statement is rather peculiar. There seems no connection between the hexagram statement and those of each line. I would explain this after I translate the statements for each line. Now, let's look at the statement of the first line. Govern with kindness. Divination produces an auspicious sign. Again, my translation is based on Gao Heng's interpretation. The key concept here is represented by the character Xian, which also appears in the second line statement, but has a different meaning there. Gao Heng argues the character Xian is an alternative script of gan, meaning to move or to touch someone's heart and mind. This is still how the character gan is used in modern Chinese, as in the phrase of 感动 or move someone, 感化 or to move and transform someone. Here, I translated 显灵 as to govern with kindness, but this translation does not get all the meaning implied here. 显灵 also include an appeal to the subject's emotion rather than rational persuasion to govern them. I have posted a video a while ago about the Confucian way to create a social political order. I won't have time to tell the whole story here. If you would like to know the detail, here's the link. It surfaces here to point out that the key in Confucian political theory is to create a socio-political order through musical and ritual performance, organized and conducted by the leaders of a community. Both ritual and musical performance aimed at regulating people's behaviors by appealing and manipulating their emotions. If you ever attended a wedding or a funeral, you would understand how powerful the ritual and music are in making you follow the rules at those occasions. The statement of the second line is, governed with authority, all species, no disadvantage. The phrase 显灵 also appears in the second line. Gao Heng argues that this phrase has a different meaning in the second line statement. Here, the character 显 is actually a mistake made by copier. It should be the character 威, meaning power, as in the phrase of 权威 or the authority. Here are the two characters of 显 and 威. As you can see from the two bronze script, they are very similar. Gao Heng argues that 显灵 should be 威灵, meaning to govern with authority. So, I translate the second line as govern with authority. The third line statement can be translated as govern with violence. Corporal punishment has no benefit. Govern with tolerance, no blame. The fourth line as govern with integrity, no blame. The fifth line as govern with wisdom, appropriate to a great king or species. The sixth line as govern with sincerity or species, no blame. Now, I can make an informed guess about what the statement of the hexagram lin is about. The statement might describe a ritual performed before a military expedition. The first line describes a ritual sacrifice, then followed by a divination procedure which produces an auspicious result. Since the sign indicates the expedition should be conducted in August, I highly suspect that the question asked by the priest was about the timing of the military campaign. More importantly, the statement of each line is about what the king should do about organizing large-scale military campaign. A successful military campaign requires loyalty, discipline, and high morale. The hexagram articulates the qualities a leader should possess if he or she were to organize such a large-scale campaign. He should exhibit kindness to his people rather than simply rely on cruelty and harsh punishment. He should lead his army with wisdom, integrity, and sincerity. It is a pity the hexagram did not record the result of this campaign. However, the qualities listed in this hexagram later developed into a political theory by Duke Zhou and transmitted to Confucius, who articulated these ideas into the most important moral principle of the Confucian school. Now, let me briefly review what we find from the statements of the four hexagrams. They might not be intended as moral teachings. They might just be records of rituals performed for various purposes, be it military campaign, annual ancestor worship rituals, or divination for a social gathering. However, such records collected useful experience and wisdoms that can be used as guiding principles for future activities. The Chinese civilization developed a unique tradition of using history as guidelines for planning the future. There is a well-known Chinese saying, 以史为鉴，可知兴衰. Using the history as a mirror, one would know the rise and fall of a dynasty. It is clear that Confucius took this to his heart and developed a moral theory based on the records from not just the historical document, but also classics like I Ching. I'm Dr. Gao, a philosopher specialized in classical Chinese philosophies, professional ethics, and philosophy of medicine. I'm also passionate about the classical Chinese poetry. I make videos about the classical Chinese poetry, philosophies, and traditional Chinese medicine. Please click the like button and subscribe my channel. Your support is very important to me. Any small donation to my channel are much appreciated so that I can focus my energy and time on making better and more videos for you. I also offer one-to-one online lessons on these subjects. So, if you would like to have personally tailored lessons or reading the classic text with me, you can contact me. Here's my email address. Thanks for watching my video. I'll see you next time.